Bella, a striking German shepherd, had always been the picture of a loving and protective mother. When she gave birth to a litter of 6 healthy puppies, she was the proudest dog in the world. The small family lived on a quiet farm, surrounded by open fields, where Bella could watch over her pups with endless devotion. Each day, she cared for them with unwavering attention, making sure they were fed, safe, and loved. Her every move was calculated to ensure their well-being. Every tiny whimper from her puppies was met with an immediate response, and her eyes never strayed far from their little forms. For weeks, Bella's world revolved around her puppies, watching them grow stronger, hearing their little paws scurry across the floor, and seeing their playful antics bring a smile to her face. She was a proud mother, content in the simplicity of her role. Her bond with each puppy was deep, but her special connection to one particular pup, a small, quiet female with soft brown eyes, was undeniable. Bella watched her with a protective gaze, always ensuring she was close by. The little puppy, who had a slight limp, relied on Bella's presence more than the others. She was a bit weaker, slower, but Bella never minded. She always made sure her fragile pup was warm and well cared for. But the peace of the farm would soon be shattered. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, Bella's world changed in an instant. When she woke, she noticed that her little pup wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. A cold wave of panic washed over her. Bella nudged her puppy gently with her nose, hoping to rouse her from sleep, but it was too late. The puppy was gone. The grief hit Bella harder than anyone could have imagined. She whimpered softly, nudging the lifeless body of her pup, hoping that somehow this was a bad dream. But reality was harsh and undeniable. Bella's heart shattered. Her ears drooped, and her usually strong frame slumped with the weight of loss. She kept licking the puppy's face, unable to comprehend the absence. The once joyful energy in the house faded to silence. Bella's eyes, once bright with love and hope, were now dull with sorrow. In the following days, Bella couldn't bring herself to leave the side of her remaining puppies. She moved slower, her usual vigor replaced by a deep, aching sadness. Her protective instincts remained, but they were clouded by grief. She would often look at the empty spot where her beloved pup had once slept, as if expecting her to return. Each time, the emptiness overwhelmed her, and she would lay her head down, staring into nothingness. It wasn't just the loss of her puppy that weighed on her. It was the overwhelming sense of helplessness. Bella didn't know how to heal, didn't know how to stop the pain in her heart. All she knew was that she had to keep going for her other puppies who still needed her. Amelia was a quiet, compassionate 8-year-old girl who lived in the small town just a few miles from the farm where Bella and her puppies lived. She had always been drawn to animals, with a soft spot for dogs, and her weekends often included visits to the farm. She loved to watch the puppies play and would spend hours sitting by their pen, her fingers lightly brushing through their fur as they tumbled around her. The connection she shared with Bella and her pups was undeniable, a bond that had grown over the months as she spent time with them. But that Saturday morning, when Amelia skipped down the path to the farm, she felt an odd heaviness in the air. It wasn't the usual lighthearted buzz of the farm. The once busy barn stood still, the birds unusually quiet. Amelia frowned, sensing something wasn't right. As she made her way toward the back of the farm, she saw Bella lying on the ground near the edge of the pen, her head resting on her paws, her eyes distant and sad. It was different than anything Amelia had seen before. Bella's usually confident, alert expression was gone. The dog's tail wasn't wagging. Her ears weren't perked in excitement at the sight of Amelia. Instead, Bella appeared, lost. She wasn't greeting her as usual, wasn't leaping up to nuzzle her, and the change was immediate and stark. It wasn't just Bella's silence that struck Amelia. It was the palpable grief radiating from her. Amelia slowly approached, her heart sinking as she knelt beside Bella. "Hey, girl," she whispered softly, reaching out to stroke Bella's thick, furry coat. Bella didn't move at first, her body stiff with sorrow, but Amelia could feel the tension easing ever so slightly under her touch. The little girl didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Animals like Bella could sense her gentle presence and her empathy, and Amelia knew exactly what to do: sit quietly, offering comfort without trying to force anything. For what seemed like an eternity, Amelia simply stayed there, allowing Bella to process whatever had happened. She didn't press for answers. Instead, she spoke in soft, soothing words, her hands never leaving Bella's fur. She shared with the dog the stories of her own life, how she had struggled at times, how she knew what it felt like to feel sad and lonely. The words were simple, but they came from a deep place of understanding. As the minutes passed, something in the air shifted. Bella let out a soft, mournful whimper before slowly lifting her head to gaze at Amelia with eyes filled with sorrow. Amelia smiled softly, her own eyes glistening with sympathy. Bella wasn't alone, not anymore, and neither was she. The connection between them, though unspoken, had begun to form, and Amelia knew that whatever had happened to Bella, she wasn't going to leave her side. The next day, Amelia arrived at the farm, feeling an unsettling quietness in the air. She had been thinking about Bella all night, wondering how the dog was holding up after the loss of her puppy. She felt a deep sense of responsibility for the grieving German shepherd, though she wasn't sure what she could do to help. Amelia had never seen Bella so subdued, and it made her heart ache. When Amelia reached the back of the farm, she spotted Bella in her usual spot near the pen, lying still in the shade of a large oak tree. As soon as the dog saw Amelia approaching, she lifted her head slowly, her eyes meeting the little girl's with a kind of silent recognition. There was something different about Bella's gaze today, something heavier. Amelia knew instantly that this wasn't the same dog she had spent time with before. The usual warmth and energy were missing, replaced by a deep, unshakable sadness. Amelia walked cautiously toward her, her heart thudding in her chest, as she wondered if Bella was ready to be comforted again. She didn't want to overwhelm the dog, but she also couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone in her grief. When she knelt beside Bella, the dog didn't move or pull away, which reassured Amelia. Instead, Bella simply lay still, her eyes watching the girl with a quiet intensity. For a moment, everything felt still. There was an air of quiet acceptance between them. Amelia reached out tentatively, stroking Bella's head with gentle fingers. She whispered, "I'm here, Bella. I'll stay with you." As Amelia continued to comfort Bella, something unexpected happened. Bella slowly stood up, her movements stiff but deliberate. She turned and walked towards the pen, pausing just at the edge. Amelia's eyes followed her, curious. Bella's gaze shifted to one of her remaining puppies, a small, fluffy pup with dark brown ears and a patch of white on its chest. Amelia had noticed this particular pup before, as it seemed to be more shy and quiet than the others. Without warning, Bella stepped toward the puppy, nudging it gently with her nose. The puppy, seemingly startled, looked up at her, but Bella kept nudging it, urging it to move. With a final push, Bella directed the puppy toward Amelia, her eyes never leaving the little girl's face. Amelia froze, unsure of what was happening. Bella wasn't usually this forward with her pups. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Bella turned and looked back at Amelia, giving a soft, almost pleading whimper. In that moment, something clicked. Bella wasn't just nudging her pup toward Amelia. She was offering it. She was giving her pup to the little girl. Amelia's heart raced, a mix of surprise and disbelief flooding her mind. Bella, in her grief, had chosen to trust Amelia in a way that no one could have expected. Her act of love was not just about her puppy, it was about a deeper, unspoken bond. Bella had made a choice. She had given her heart, her precious pup, to Amelia. And now, Amelia had to decide what to do with this incredible gift. Amelia's hands trembled as she looked down at the tiny puppy, now sitting at her feet, looking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mix of awe and disbelief. Bella had just given her a piece of her heart, a small, fragile life, and the weight of the gesture didn't escape Amelia. Bella, who had already suffered so much loss, was entrusting her with something precious, something that had once been a source of joy and comfort. Amelia reached down slowly, her fingers brushing against the soft fur of the puppy. She could feel the warmth of the little body, its slight tremors from the unfamiliar surroundings. The puppy looked up at her with quiet curiosity, as if trying to make sense of the world around it. It was a small, fragile creature, almost like a part of Bella's spirit. Amelia's heart swelled with emotion, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. She understood the depth of what had just happened. Bella had been through unimaginable heartache, yet she had chosen to trust Amelia to pass the torch of love on to her. Amelia gently scooped the puppy into her arms, cradling it against her chest. The puppy immediately nestled in, seeking comfort in the warmth of her embrace. It felt right, as if the little dog had always belonged there. Bella stood a few feet away, watching with a look that was hard to read. Sadness, yes, but also a kind of quiet relief. Bella's gaze was still heavy with sorrow, but there was a flicker of peace in her eyes now, as if she knew the puppy was in good hands. With the puppy nestled in her arms, Amelia stood up slowly and turned to look at Bella. There was a promise in her eyes, a silent vow that she would take care of this puppy, protect it, love it the way it deserved to be loved. She whispered, her voice barely above a whisper, "I promise, Bella, I'll take care of him. I'll love him, just like you would." For a long moment, there was nothing but the soft rustling of the wind and the quiet sound of the puppy's soft breathing. Bella remained still, watching as Amelia made her promise. The dog's eyes softened, as if she knew that the little girl meant every word. She had given her puppy to someone who would not only care for him, but would also cherish him with all the love in her heart. With one final glance, Bella turned and walked back to her spot under the tree. She lay down again, her body still and calm, though there was a subtle shift in her demeanor. The heartbreak wasn't gone. Nothing could replace what she had lost. But for the first time in days, there was a flicker of hope. Bella had given her puppy away, but in doing so, she had found a sense of peace. Amelia, holding the puppy close to her chest, walked slowly back toward her home, the weight of the promise she had made heavy in her heart. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was Bella. The weeks following Max's arrival in Amelia's home marked the beginning of a slow, steady healing process. Though Max was still a small, fragile creature, he began to show small signs of progress. His quiet nature started to shift as he grew more comfortable in his new surroundings. Amelia was patient, always by his side, ready to offer him comfort whenever he needed it. The bond between them deepened with each passing day, strengthened by Amelia's quiet, constant presence. At first, Max was a shadow of the playful, lively puppy he might have been. He would often stay curled up in Amelia's lap, content to rest against her, comforted by the rhythm of her breathing. He didn't yet understand that he could trust the world around him again, and the sudden change from Bella's care to Amelia's arms left him wary of new things. But as Amelia gently encouraged him, coaxing him to explore their garden, their walks around the yard, and eventually the park, Max began to blossom. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a warm golden hue across the yard, Max took his first true step toward independence. Amelia had been gently throwing a ball for him to chase, but until now, Max had hesitated, watching the ball roll away without much interest. That evening, something changed. As the ball rolled toward the far side of the yard, Max's eyes followed it with newfound determination. Without hesitation, he darted forward, his little legs moving with newfound speed. He caught the ball in his mouth and ran back to Amelia, his tail wagging furiously. Amelia's heart leaped in her chest as she saw the spark in Max's eyes, the spark that had been buried under sadness and fear. She clapped her hands in joy, her face lighting up with pride. "Good boy, Max," she cheered, her voice full of excitement. Max dropped the ball at her feet, his tongue hanging out in a panting smile. For the first time since Bella had given him to her, Amelia saw the puppy she had always hoped Max could become, a playful, energetic dog who would love life again. And it wasn't just Max who was healing. Amelia, too, had found something in this little puppy that filled a void in her heart. In nurturing Max's recovery, she was also recovering her own sense of peace and joy that she didn't even realize she had lost. As Max's confidence grew, so did their bond. He followed her everywhere, always close by, as if to reassure himself that she was still there. When he wasn't playing in the yard or running beside her on walks, He would curl up at her feet while she read or did her homework. His presence had become a constant source of comfort, a reminder that, no matter what had been lost, love was still very much alive in their home. One afternoon, while they were sitting outside, Bella arrived at the edge of the yard. She stood quietly, watching from a distance as Max and Amelia played together. Amelia noticed Bella right away, her heart skipping a beat. The old German shepherd looked peaceful, as if the weight of grief had finally lifted from her shoulders. Bella's tail wagged softly, her eyes softening as she watched Max run around in joyful circles. Max noticed Bella too. He stopped in his tracks, his ears perking up, and slowly walked toward her. For a moment, there was a quiet standstill, as if the two of them shared a silent understanding. Max's tail wagged, and he nuzzled Bella gently, a gesture of affection and respect. Bella lowered her head, nudging him back with a soft whimper. She had done her part. She had given Max the opportunity to grow, to live, and now she was able to let go, content in knowing that Max was happy and well cared for. As the months passed, life on the farm and in Amelia's home began to settle into a rhythm, a new kind of normal. Max had grown into a strong, playful puppy with a personality as bright as his golden fur. He was no longer the timid, fragile creature that had been so unsure of the world. His tail wagged constantly, his eyes sparkled with joy, and he had become an inseparable part of Amelia's life. The bond between them was unbreakable, founded on love, patience, and a deep mutual trust. Yet, despite the joy Max brought into her life, Amelia knew that the bond he shared with Bella was irreplaceable. There were moments when she'd find Max sitting quietly by the door, his ears perked and his eyes scanning the yard, as if he were waiting for something. She knew he still missed his mother, and there were days when the longing in his gaze was palpable. Though he had learned to thrive under Amelia's care, there would always be a part of him that remembered Bella, his first protector, his mother. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard, Amelia stood on the porch watching Max run around in the garden. He darted between the flowers, chasing butterflies with the joyful energy only a puppy could have. But there, just beyond the fence, stood Bella. The German shepherd had returned, as she often did, to check on her pup. Her movements were slower now, the weight of her age more apparent, but her eyes were soft and full of warmth. Bella stood at the edge of the yard, watching Max, and for a moment, everything seemed to pause. Amelia knew that this was one of the last moments when Bella would come to visit in this way. She had done her part. She had given Max everything he needed to grow strong and find happiness again. Now it was time for her to let go, to let her pup live fully with the love and care he had found in Amelia's home. Amelia walked toward the fence, calling softly to Bella. She had noticed the older dog's health had begun to decline, and though Bella still came by occasionally, there was a quiet sadness in the way she moved. Amelia had been preparing herself for the inevitable. Bella was nearing the end of her life, and her visits had become fewer and farther between. As Amelia knelt by the fence, she reached out, gently resting her hand on Bella's head. The older dog nuzzled into her palm, closing her eyes as if to savor the moment. Bella had no more words to offer, no more advice to give. She had entrusted Max to the little girl, and now she could rest easy knowing that he was loved and cared for. Max, sensing the quiet moment, slowly trotted over and sat beside Bella. He didn't jump or bark excitedly like he usually did. Instead, he sat close to her, his body pressed gently against hers. In that moment, Amelia saw something truly beautiful, a full circle of love. Bella had given him life, and now he was giving her peace. Days passed, and Bella's visits grew fewer. Amelia had always known that one day, Bella would no longer be able to visit the farm or check on Max, but nothing could prepare her for the moment when she would have to say goodbye. It wasn't just Bella's age catching up with her. It was the quiet, undeniable signs that the dog was growing weaker. Her once proud stance had started to slump, and her walks had become slower and more labored. Amelia noticed the changes first. She'd find Bella lying near the oak tree, her body still but her eyes watching the world with a kind of solemn understanding. Max, who had grown stronger and more confident, would often run to her, wagging his tail and nudging her with his nose. But Bella, while still affectionate, seemed to grow more distant. She no longer had the energy to play with him, nor did she have the strength to go on long walks with Amelia. It was during one of these quiet afternoons that Amelia made the decision. She had always believed in being present for the animals she loved, and she knew Bella needed her now more than ever. She called her parents and explained what was happening. Together, they made the difficult decision to take Bella to the vet, to ease her pain and help her pass with the dignity and love she had always shown. On the day of Bella's appointment, the entire family gathered around her. Max, sensing the heaviness of the moment, stayed close to Bella, his eyes full of confusion. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew that something was changing. Bella, though tired, seemed to appreciate the closeness of both her pup and the people she had come to trust. She was surrounded by love, and that was all she had ever needed. Amelia sat beside Bella on the floor, stroking her head gently, just as she had done on the day Bella first entrusted Max to her care. She whispered softly, "Thank you, Bella. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could ask for. I'll take care of him, I promise." As the vet gently administered the medication, Bella's eyes softened, and for a moment, it felt as if time stood still. Max nuzzled her one last time, his tiny whimper echoing in the silence. Bella closed her eyes slowly, and the once vibrant energy that had always radiated from her body began to fade. It was peaceful, serene, and filled with the love she had always shared. The room grew still, and Amelia felt a tear slip down her cheek. She held Bella's head close to her chest for a long while, her fingers brushing through the dog's fur, feeling the quiet strength that had once been so full of life. And though Bella was gone, the love they had shared, between Amelia, Max, and Bella, would remain forever, a memory imprinted on their hearts. Max, his tail low and his eyes wide, sat quietly by Amelia's side. He knew deep down that Bella was at peace, and that the love she had given him would stay with him always. The days following Bella's passing were quiet and somber. The world seemed to slow down for Amelia as she tried to process the loss of the dog who had trusted her with the greatest gift of all, Max. She could still feel the weight of Bella's presence in their home, the quiet calm of the dog who had loved her unconditionally, and the profound bond they had shared. But as the sadness settled, a new sense of responsibility took root within Amelia. She had promised Bella that she would care for Max, and now that promise was more important than ever. Max, though still grieving in his own way, began to show signs of adjusting to life without his mother. He no longer searched the yard for Bella, and his playfulness gradually returned. It wasn't the same as before, but there was a new quiet strength in him. Amelia had always known that the bond between them had been forged in love, and it was that love that would guide them through the tough days ahead. Amelia poured her heart into caring for Max. Their daily walks through the neighborhood, their time spent in the garden, and the endless hours of play all became moments of healing for both of them. Max's tail began to wag with more enthusiasm once again, and his eyes sparkled with the same joy Amelia had once seen in him as a small, timid puppy. With every joyful bark, every wag of his tail, Amelia knew that Max was learning to live again. But it wasn't just Max who was healing. Amelia, too, had found a deeper connection to the world around her. Her bond with the little puppy, who had grown into a strong, beautiful dog, helped her find peace after the loss of Bella. She realized that while grief could feel overwhelming, it could also make space for love to grow in unexpected ways. Max had become her constant companion, her source of joy and comfort, just as Bella had been for him. One afternoon, as they sat together on the porch, Max curled up at Amelia's feet, a soft breeze rustling the leaves of the trees. Amelia looked down at him, her hand resting gently on his back, and she smiled. "We'll be okay, Max," she whispered, her voice full of conviction. "We'll be okay." Max lifted his head at the sound of her voice, his eyes meeting hers with a look of unwavering trust. He nuzzled her hand, as if to say that he believed her too. In that moment, Amelia realized that the love Bella had given them both had created a foundation that could never be broken. It was a love that transcended time, a love that would live on in both of them forever. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the sky, Amelia knew that life would go on. It wasn't always easy, and there would be moments of sadness, but the love they shared, the unspoken bond between herself and Max, would carry them forward no matter what came next. And so, together, they stepped into the future with hearts full of love, ready to face whatever life had in store.